Mary Stewart. I'm here with Rich Gaudreau, who's a private attorney in Salem, New Hampshire, and we are talking today about 5 things to know about student loans. So, Rich, what do I need to know before signing a student loan?
But you should only get, if you can do it, federal student loans. Private student loans are the worst. They're the biggest problem I see. Federal student loans will have a payment plan. After you graduate, if you can't afford to make a payment, they can make a payment for you at 0. Private student loans will never do that. Federal student loans won't demand a cosigner. There's so many more rights with federal student loans than there are with private student loans. And sometimes you don't even know what type of student loan you're going to get. You just apply for one, and if a FAFSA application could be for a state loan, it could be for a federal loan. If it's with the Department of Education, where all federal student loans now are, it's a federal student loan. It used to be that they'd come from banks and lending institutions. They don't do that anymore. So if you are getting a loan from Citizens, if you're getting a loan from some lending institution, it's a private student loan.
So if I'm applying for a student loan, I should just make sure I understand if it's a federal loan or a private loan.
Absolutely. You don't want to make that mistake. If it's with the Department of Education, it's a federal loan.
Okay.
That's simple.
So if I already have loans now, how do I tell if they're private loans or federal loans if I don't know that?
It's surprising. I get that call a lot when I have somebody call me about a student loan issue, and I ask them whether they're federal or private. Some know, but a lot don't. Go to the National Student Loan Data System, which is an online database. Just Google that term, National Student Loan Data System. Put it in quotes, throw it in Google. You'll find the website. You can log in. You can get a password that day. And whatever you see in there are federal student loans. It's 99% certain that you only have federal student loans if you see your federal student loans in there. If you don't see them in there, you probably have private student loans, most likely 99%. But pull your credit report if you're wondering. That might help.
So the student loan database and also pulling your credit report.
Yeah.
You figure it out?
Because your rights vary so dramatically.
Okay.
That anybody that you're going to for advice isn't going to know what to tell you until you can answer that question.
So what kind of problems do you see in your practice with loans?
The biggest problem I see 99% of the time is somebody calls me up with a private student loan problem. I get people who call me who are living with their parents after they graduate, which wasn't on their top 10 list of fun things to do, because they can't afford their private student loan payment.
Are there any tips that you can recommend?
If you can't pay all your student loans, I would choose your federal over your private student loans, because the federal have greater powers to do things like garnish your wages and offset your Social Security and seize your tax refund. They'll also give you payment plans that are great and will give you a payment.
So there's a lot of payment plans, income contingent type repayment plans you can do?
Yeah, income contingent repayment is for Parents Plus loans typically. Income-based repayment is usually for Stafford loans. There's something called Repay, which is a new type of payment plan that came into being a little over a year ago. It's a labyrinth of regulations. You have to be careful about which ones you qualify for. But there are some tricks that you can use for these payment plans that they haven't outlawed and you can still do. Like for income contingent repayment plans, you're not eligible for them if you have Parents Plus loans because you sent your kids to school like 10 years ago before the federal government lent all the money banks used to. Those loans are not eligible for a repayment plan. Another thing you can do is if you're on something like income-based repayment and you're married and your spouse makes more money than you, but the loans are only in your name, Stafford loans from college, for example, you can separate your income from your spouse's income for purposes of doing an income-driven repayment plan, because the federal government will look at the tax return that you give them. They'll look at the first page, which has adjusted gross income in it. That line, if you file taxes separately, will just have your tax information in there. I don't know whether you'll be giving up rights that you might not want to do. Talk to an accountant before you do it.
So something to consider. And how about the banks that I see a lot of advertising for consolidating your student loans with local banks? Do you recommend that?
That's like the worst thing I think somebody could do, because you're going to get a lower interest rate is how they sell that. But you're going to be paying your student loan for probably a decade, maybe longer. And at some point, life is going to happen, and you might lose a job, or your income is going to get reduced, or something. Some catastrophe is going to, like happens in bankruptcy all the time, keep you from paying what you want to pay. If you've got private student loans because you've consolidated your federal loans into a private student loan, just because you're getting a lower interest rate and that happens, your payment's not going to go down, and you're going to go into immediate default on your private student loans. If you have federal student loans, you're in an income-driven repayment plan, your payment might go down to zero while your income went away. So you don't want to give up those rights, for sure.
So even though your interest rate is lower initially, if you run into problems later, you won't have as many rights. So you think that's not a good idea?
It might be a good idea for somebody who has a really small loan and is making great money. They owe $5,000, and the interest rate in a federal loan is like 8%, and they can get 4%, and they know they're going to pay it off like a car loan in 3 years.
Short period of time.
But if a lot of these private student loans, and people are graduating with $50,000, $100,000 of student loan debt, you're taking a real risk if you switch your federal to private there, that nothing's going to change in terms of your ability to repay it. It's probably not the best move.
And you mentioned bankruptcy. I mean, how about bankruptcy to help if you're having trouble paying your student loans?
You can file an undue hardship complaint in a bankruptcy. They're not automatically discharged. An undue hardship complaint, a lot of bankruptcy lawyers will tell you, isn't worth doing. But if you get somebody who tells you that, ask that lawyer if they've ever done one. Because there are certain circumstances where it is good, and I don't think it's a black and white answer all the time. And you don't want to be one of those people who's going to hear years down the line that you might have been a good candidate. And it's just a quick consultation with somebody to run your situation by them to hear whether or not it might help for you to do something like that. And if you're getting sued by a private student lender and your parents getting sued, a Chapter 13 will stop the lawsuit. So that's something to consider, just because people really are upset when their parents or relatives are pulled into the mix with them when collectors get involved, and they'll do almost anything. It's bad enough they're in the difficulty, but they want to get their parents off the hook. That'll give people some breathing space. Sometimes you can use a 13 to raise defenses against fees, try to negotiate interest rates. You need to get proactive and create some leverage for yourself to deal with these private student lenders who usually feel like they have all the cards.
And you talk to your lawyer about the dischargeability, and they're not willing to file that complaint. You're saying maybe talk to a couple different people. All right, well, thank you for coming here today to talk to us about student loans. This video is brought to you by the New Hampshire Bar Association Foreclosure Relief Project. If you would like to contact the New Hampshire Lawyer Referral Service for an attorney to talk about your student loans, call 603-229-0002 or visit online www.nhlrs.org. Thank you.